Oh, this is going to be interesting. Good morning and welcome back. Welcome. Good morning, New Hampshire, the Pulse of an Edge. Good morning up into Portland, Maine, our WTSN AM and FM, 98.1 FM, 1270 AM. And of course, Manchester, Concord, Lakes region, we have you blanketed. Thousands of you are streaming, listening nationally beyond our Manchester, Maine, Boston metro region. Thank you very, very much. Hey, Google, hey, Alexa, play the Pulse of an Age. Welcome to Tuesday. We have some clouds out there and some showers here and there, 50s for a high. That Steve Portnoy, ABC News, talking about that measure in Congress. Going to be very, very interesting. You're going to see on display the split in the Democrat Party. The so-called progressives, who I call the regressives, are going to be basically anti-Israel on this thing, and the moderates will stand with a little bit of common sense. Meanwhile, the kids, the students at Columbia University, have breached the building there, if you will, and saying this is a movement and they are not going anywhere, it seems, because the administration is not making them go anywhere. So they've taken over the school. But you've heard me talk on the show for years now about Columbia University, well before the situation, October 7th, the war between Israel and Hamas and what's going on in the Gaza Strip and Palestinian and all this stuff and Hamas and Israel. Long before that, I talked about an anti American, anti Western sentiment because you have to ask a question. Where are the students learning this stuff? Mostly at Columbia from their professors, by the way, because they hate this country. All right, some commentary on that, but we're going to switch gears. We also are going to hear from the head of the Bureau of Securities and Regulation in New Hampshire on some consumer tips for you this morning. Got some financial news for you. We're going to tell you about a really cool effort to get young people to make a living on the high seas. Andrea Tomlinson's going to be joining us from the New England Young Fishermen's Alliance over in Portsmouth in a little bit. But we come out of the gate this morning with a newsmaker, and she is Republican gubernatorial candidate Kelly Ayotte, former U.S. Senator, joining us live. Good morning, New Hampshire. Thanks for being with us. A lot going on, but let's try and keep it here locally for a little bit. A lot of national attention. But, when you were first on with me as a candidate for governor, I think it was the day after you announced, you had an interesting line, and I've been noticing a lot of news between Massachusetts and New Hampshire recently. Everything from, increasing tolls on pickup trucks in Massachusetts to how much they're spending down there for so-called migrant shelter or hotel support, if you will. But you said we're one election away from becoming Massachusetts. Can you elaborate on what you meant by that as you go further into this campaign? You're in a primary, of course. Just talking about what you mean by that. Right. You brought up Joyce Craig and, of course, Cindy Warmington, the other major Democrat, and Chuck Morris, former Senate president, Republican candidate, one of the major Republicans you're running against. But Kelly Ayotte, Republican gubernatorial candidate. You mentioned Joyce Craig. I just have to bring this up. The term illegal alien is basically, I think, throughout the federal code on immigration as an acceptable term. When she was asked on WMUR recently, Adam Sexton's interview or show, about the term illegal alien, she says that's offensive to her, and she thinks folks like this should be called undocumented individuals. What do you make of this? Right. Yeah. Let me ask you this. Recently, I just commented in the beginning, the Massachusetts transportation official who brought up this idea of placing higher tolls, for example, on pickup trucks. You know, those darn people like myself who love my pickup truck every day. It's like my second house. They basically want to make it more expensive. And I don't know the details here, but your significant other, Joe, your husband, sort of responded to the Massachusetts thing with his pickup and his A10 license plate. And the chairman of the Democrat Party, Ray Buckley, kind of went after the A-10 license plate. Now, I know your husband was a fighter pilot in the Middle East, and this was for the Warthog jet he commanded. But what's your reaction to that whole thing? Hmm. Yep. Kelly, yeah, really. Real quickly before I let you go, I want to ask you this, Kelly, Republican gubernatorial candidate. There's no doubt nationally and locally, no doubt the Democrats are going to want to talk about abortion rights all day long. I don't think they want to talk about the economy. A CNN poll says 70% of Americans think the economy is in poor shape and that the Biden administration has been a failure. 66%. So, not good numbers for Joe Biden on the economy. Immigration, the border, we just talked about a lot of this. So, abortion rights are going to be very loudly heard here nationally and locally. And Cindy Warmington, one of the Democrats running, has already challenge you to a debate on your abortion right record. So let me come out and ask you candidly, do you want to ban all abortions in New Hampshire if you're elected governor? All right, thanks for joining us. Good morning, New Hampshire. The Pulse Vintage Kelly A live this morning. Thank you. When we come back, D-Day approaching 70th anniversary. What's that? Well, it has 80th on the. Oh, she made a mistake. 80 years because I remember the 70th. 80 years. Thank you, J Dog. That was from our friends at NBC. Even they can make mistakes. I'm just reading the lead in here. 80 years of D-Day. Maybe the kiddies at Columbia would benefit from understanding why we went onto those beaches in Normandy and got onto this continent of Europe to fight Adolf Hitler. Maybe they would benefit today from a class on that. What a novel concept. And then go visit the Holocaust Museum in Washington. John Decker on deck. Then we'll have some political analysis. Brad Card, one of our analysts and all-stars. Hey, Alexa, hey, Google, play the Pulse of Nate back in a flash. All right, busy Tuesday. We'll have more of my interview with Kelly Ayotte, former U.S. Senator, Republican candidate for governor, now challenging one of her Democrat challengers to a debate. This is going to be a fun season. Hey, I'm going to switch gears. Our own White House correspondent, John Decker, talking about the 80th anniversary of D-Day. It's ironic this is coming up at a time when Columbia students have taken over a building at the university over the whole debate of Israel and the war with Hamas and anti-Semitism on campus. Because I kind of know why the GIs and Easy Company and our airborne and our troops went over to Europe and the anniversary of D-Day. But John, you get to do something that I did only. I've done it a few times, and there's nothing more remarkable than to sit down and interview one of these World War II veterans in their 90s. Take it away, John. Interesting. John, real quickly, because it is germane, what's your take on this measure in Congress, which goes back to define basically anti Semitism on campus? Are we going to see a split among Democrats between moderates and progressives over this in the House? Hmm. Yeah. Yeah. Well, yeah. Right. Yeah, and you wonder where they learned it all from those teachers. Thank you, John. John Decker, our own White House correspondent. Brad Card, I know you have a meeting in a little bit. One of our political analysts and All Stars, Card and Associates. Brad, real quickly, what's your take on what's going on at Columbia and some of these universities? Because it will get back to Congress. But John Decker, I think, just put it very, very well. Yeah. Hmm. Oh yeah, yeah, it's crazy. Yeah, yeah, I know. Yeah. Well, no, I mean, they're a terrorist organization, Brad, and that's what they're glorifying. And you know what, Brad? I don't want to get into it with you, but you and I probably agree more than not. I've been talking on this show for a couple of years now, long before October 7th, about the anti-American, anti-Western stuff going on in Colombia. So it's not so much about the Middle East as that they just hate this country. Hey, Brad, let's switch. I know, I know. Dan, I don't know. Well, there's a difference between free speech and hate speech, right? And you're right. And Dan Crenshaw, you probably know him, met him from Texas, the Navy SEAL. He wrote a great book about this, about the stuff on college campuses, and he said it really started about 2012, and we won't get into that. Hey, Brad, this CNN poll, about Trump beating Biden, 70% of Americans feel the economy is in poor shape. This is the one that really gets me. More than 60 something percent feel the Biden presidency has been a failure. And the same percentage feel, in hindsight, Trump's presidency first term was a success. 66% disapprove of Biden. But this is CNN, Brad, not Fox. Mm, mhm. Yeah. All right, Brad Card. I know you got a meeting. Thank you, Brad Card, Card and Associates. Catch you tomorrow. We're going to come back and talk about a lot this morning, but on a positive note, pretty cool stuff. We're packed at 10 o'clock, but one of the interviews, Andrea Tomlinson. And by the way, J Dog, for the news story, I got to point out there's no H in Tomlinson because we're going to do a story on this. She's the founder and executive director of the New England Young Fishermen's Alliance, and it's over in Portsmouth. And she founded the Portsmouth-based New England Young Fishermen's Alliance to help train young people whose passion for the sea makes it their life's work. And she talks about locally, they call it the graying of the fleet. Older, experienced captains and fishermen and lobstermen are older folks, and how many younger folks are entering the field of fishing or lobstering? And we're seeing it not just in that; we're seeing it in home building, remodeling, construction. A lot of the finished carpenters are getting to be closer to 60 or 65 retirement age than 30. And we need to really look at this. So I'm looking forward to that. That's a good story coming up. Come back though and talk about why isn't the administration at Columbia clearing the students out? And at what point does this movement become kind of scary in terms of enhancing anti-Semitism and almost uh, militant? When we come back on Good Morning Hampshire, the Pulse of an H. Hey, Google, hey, Alexa, play the Pulse of an H. Back in a few. All right, interesting stuff. We had Kelly Ayotte on earlier. She's running for governor, Republican. Of course, Chuck Morse, former U.S. Senate candidate, Senate president, Republican, one of the other major Republicans running. And then you have a couple Democrats major, and there's others. There's always more than you hear about because some of these campaigns may not be as statewide or organized, but the ones you hear about are Cindy Warmington and Joyce Craig. And you are seeing, even though it seems like a long way away from the national stage or national chatter or national campuses or other states or other major cities, big cities, you're seeing a lot of the national stuff boil over here at home. Kelly Ayotte talking a lot about Massachusetts, their immigration policies on sanctuary, how much they're spending, saying things like we're one election away here from becoming Massachusetts, and actually calling out one of her Democrat challengers, Cindy Warmington, who had challenged Ayotte recently to a debate on abortion rights, questioning Ayotte wants to debate her on her supporting the pharma industry in the past in New Hampshire, pointing to the addiction and death from opioids and oxy, and now, of course, synthetic fentanyl from addiction. Interesting stuff. But I want to get back to something I just don't understand. And as we look, to me, and I mean this, as we look to the 80th anniversary of D-Day, I think the and just great shows like Band of Brothers that were made about this, or um, Saving Private Ryan, and some other great movies, or you want to go back to Patton and way back with George C. Scott. But when you look at D-Day and what it was all about, what makes what's happening on Columbia University and these other college campuses so prophetic and profound. And as I said yesterday in the show, let's be honest, some of this is made worse by social media because these quote unquote agitators, these student, the folks that have now taken over or broken in and taken over a building at Columbia, hanging things out the window like they've taken over a building in another country. It's all sort of self-propelled and perpetuated or maintained with social media. But what pisses me off, quite frankly, is kids can be kids to a point. And there's a big difference between peaceful protest and militant. But this anti-American stuff and glorifying Hamas, I'm just telling you right now, if you're caught in the middle of that, don't be. There's good and evil in the world, and no one's perfect. But Hamas is a terrorist organization, period, end of story. Their number one mission is to obliterate Israel. Tehran is a bad regime and a bad system. And the proxies in Syria and ISIS and the whole Hezbollah, the whole thing is terrorism. And they would kill you and your family in a second, and your lifestyle in the West. And when you see students not calling for an end of violence or peace, but pro Hamas, this has got to stop. This isn't free speech and peaceful protest. This is as bad as anything I've probably ever seen in my lifetime in terms of protests in this country. And I've seen a lot. And speaking of D-Day, I remember years ago when John Lynch was governor, and he asked me to MC or moderate a homecoming event for the troops right in front of our state house, with all the gold ribbons and our troops coming back from the Middle East, and the war against groups like Hamas, by the way. And that's what these morons who are leading the students who don't even know what they're protesting, that's what they're glorifying. And I remember a group showed up at that, which is nothing like this, but it was a group that was protesting our military, and we had lost a few, and then we were celebrating Gold Star families, and they protested, and they were saying, bad things about our troops and all that. And they were out of Massachusetts. It was some strange group, actually a sort of some bizarre religious group that was just anti. How do you know that, J-Dog? Westboro Baptist Church. How did you know that? Westboro. Wow. That's why he is the illustrious one, J-Dog. Wow. 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 I am impressed. Thank you, buddy. So I'm up there and I'm looking at this group over here protesting the flag and the troops while the troops are here and we're hundreds of people out there. Beautiful day. And I said to one of the Marines to my left up in these steps with the governor there and the Senate president, and he's in his dress blues, a young guy, young guy. I can say guy, right? I don't have to say they. Can I say guy? Because he was a guy, he's a Marine. And I said, well, it must be hard for you to see that, sir. Now he's only, he was like 21 years old. And he said, sir, that's why we wear this uniform, is to protect free speech. He goes, as much as that is disgusting, they have a right to protest peacefully. I don't think that same Marine today would say what those students at Columbia are doing right now, what their message is peaceful. But let's get back to D-Day. I find it profound that this nation and the world endured 1939 to 1945. Now, I happen to be someone who has an immense respect for World War II and the history and the individuals who helped save the world. Because, no offense to half the professors at Columbia who don't teach history and facts, but have a political activist agenda, which is anti American, they don't deserve to be in the same room with people who understand the history, the real history of World War II and the greatness and the sacrifice. From those young GIs and Easy Company members who were landing on those beaches to the airborne folks who were dropping into Europe at Normandy, D-Day. They were getting gunned down before they even got off the barges to get onto the beachheads. The Germans were fortified. And our troops that I've met, like John Decker, our own White House correspondent earlier, one time Renee Plummer and I, the great Renee Plummer, veteran advocate, good morning. We got to go to the Exeter Inn to meet. We were asked both to go there and have lunch with a World War II veteran who was in his 90s at the time. And listen to this stuff because this is greatness. And unfortunately, these young kids, too many of them in our universities, especially the handful that are making all this noise, they can't even comprehend. They can't even comprehend the history of this gentleman who's, I'm sure, passed away since because this was a number of years ago. But we go to the Exeter Inn. He's in his 90s. And just picture this for a moment. It's a healthy visual for you because it's less toxic than the stress of this crap that I'm seeing in our universities. Because again, peaceful protest is fine, but this isn't peaceful protest anymore. The administration, they should just clear out these students in a second, arrest them, kick them off campus, clean it up, tell them if they keep it up, they're out. It's very simple. Why do you need an agreement with these students? You don't have an agreement. They've gone too far. Rules are rules. But anyway, let's get back to the luncheon with this veteran, World War II. And he was talking about how quickly he joined the draft. He lied about his age. He wanted to go fight Hitler and the Nazis. He said he had played basketball in New Hampshire, and so they immediately thought he might be a good 82nd Airborne parachuter. They rushed him through the boot camp for that. Next thing you know, he's jumping into Europe. He winds up at the Normandy invasion on the beach, and as he's charging forward, he didn't even know he took a round in his stomach on his right side, sort of above his belt line, and he's charging forward with his fellow GIs as not the Germans are just firing machine gun and fire at them, big rounds, and so he gets ripped in the stomach, and he's telling this story, and his sister, who was in her 70s or 80s at this luncheon, had never heard this, never heard this. And he's telling me as I'm sitting with my hand on his arm at the end of the table, and Renee's on the other side, just listening to him. We asked him one question, and he just talked, and he just talked. And it was almost like listening to a Johnny Cash or just a great musical ballad. He just talked about his service in World War II. Shot in the stomach on the beach at Normandy. I said, "What do you do?" And he goes, "I did what everyone else did. I put my hand down, covered it. I could see part of my stomach hanging. I just pushed it back in and taped it up a little bit, hid behind the only bush, the only fortification in the area, knelt down, put some tape on it that I had in my kit, covered my stomach and held it in and kept running and fighting." That's sacrifice. That's fighting for your country, right? At the highest level. And then I said, what happened then? He goes, well, I wound up in a tent somewhere in a military hospital set up not far from the beaches for 2 weeks in like an infirmary, he said. And then a guy walks in, one of General Patton's folks, and said, you, We want you. So he wound up fighting World War II in Patton's division, General George, Patton. And he had an incredible story of service and what it was like to be over there. And he was over there a couple of years, and his sister never heard the story. But when we look at D-Day and we look at why the heck we fought in World War II, and this is why history does matter. That's why I don't like all this woke stuff. Never have, never will, because people need to wake up in a real way and understand, even if our history is flawed, we have to learn from it and do it better in the future, because the only way you get to the future is to know from where you came. So I look at World War II history and people like Winston Churchill and the Allies and FDR and the reluctance, the reticence, and the appeasement that was going on with Neville Chamberlain before Hitler became prime minister of Hitler, and people sucking up to Hitler, and Time magazine naming him the best person alive as he rolled across Czechoslovakia, Poland, and across Europe before they even started the extermination of 6.2 million Jewish people. And I'm like, okay. So Churchill gets in there. FDR was reticent and reluctant before we went there. And then, of course, on the other side, to keep us out of the Pacific, Japanese bombed Pearl Harbor. It was a vicious, incredible war. And we fought it, and we won. And the Allies won. And we beat Japan, Germany, Mussolini. We won. We liberated Europe, and we did what we could to liberate the concentration camps. Do you know do you know that the Jewish prisoners in those POW camps, when our first Easy Company first discovered one in Germany, they didn't know what the hell it was, and they had to call headquarters saying, "We don't know. We just came across this camp, and we don't even know who these prisoners are. There's nothing to them. They're bones. They're literally bones stacked up." And you know that our GIs were told by their commanders, be careful when you give them water for hydration, you'll kill them. If they've been so starved, you just can't give them a whole thermos. You got to give them sips. We got to nurse these people back to life. And they came out of their holes in the ground. There were ovens nearby where the Nazis had put Jewish prisoners of war into those ovens and just closed it and burned them alive until they were ashes. The skin was taken off their bodies for things like lampshades. And if you go to the Holocaust Museum, which is something every one of these students, after they're arrested at Columbia, should be made to do, is go to Washington, D.C. for 2 or 3 days and go through the Holocaust Museum there. And then you tell me if you're pro-Hamas. You tell me. So to me, there's no gray area here. To me, I know what happened on October 7th. And I'll give these students not much of a buy, but I'll give them about 2 or 3 degrees of separation on a buy, because a lot of them don't even understand what the hell they're doing. They're just caught up in the moment. Okay? They're just caught up in the moment. Oh, let's protest. Let's take over a building. Let's demand that our university divest on any investments to Israel. Let's make sure the president's fired here. And this is really cool because we're running the prison. We're running the show. This is really cool. This is really cool. It feels great. I'm having a blast. Can we order some pepperoni pizza? Will they bring it in? Is they should be made to go to the Holocaust Museum in Washington, D.C. And a lot of them do not know what they're protesting, but don't kid yourself. Like any movement or protest, there's a small degree of very serious, professional, militant people in there who are loving every minute of this. And you know who else is loving it? The enemies of the United States of America. The enemies of the United States of America are loving this because they watch CNN, they watch Fox, they have satellites, they have the internet, they're watching this news, and they're going, wow. Wow. These students are actually cheering for our terrorist organizations that want to obliterate Israel and eventually the West, and we hate America, and they're cheering for us over there. How cool is this? Osama bin Laden's rolling over in his big grave, or actually he's in the ocean. Sorry, SEAL Team 6, thank you very much. Laughing all the way to the terrorist bank that they got all these kids. What they don't know is they don't have the country. They have some college students who have nothing else to do with their time that are basically glorifying. And don't kid yourself, after October 7th, I saw at George Washington University, of all places, I saw the light on the brick wall while the infants' bodies were not even buried yet in the kibbutz in Israel and the young girls who were raped and murdered. I saw glorify the martyrs, Hamas. I saw it. This anti-Semitism stuff has been just waiting to come out, but it really started well before that with an anti-American sentiment. That's what's going on in Columbia. That's what the professors are teaching the students. This country sucks. Your parents' house is too big. Revolt, rebel, tear down this society. Now, what they want, I'm not sure. Do they want Tehran? Do they want Beijing? Do they want Moscow? Do they want communism? I don't know what they don't know what they want. But I'll tell you right now, I have a bigger disdain for a majority of those tenured Ivy League faculty who've been brainwashing young students who are probably brainwashable. It's harder to brainwash an adult, but the 18-year-old kiddies that go there with bubble wrap, if you have a professor telling you every day that your country sucks, the military stinks, law enforcement's the problem, our economy, your parents, your footprint, everything about our country is terrible. Well, what are you going to believe when you get your diploma? Commentary. Clean them out, clear it out, take them out, arrest them, clean it up, move on. Have your commencement, by the way. Commentary 603-228-2080. J-Dog, thank you. We'll be right back. We'll have great stories coming up. 10 o'clock's packed, so buckle up. Hey, Google, hey, Alexa, play the Pulse of an H. All right. Well, in the capital region, it is gray and pouring. I just saw some lightning, J Dog. I just saw a flash out there. So some showers out there and cloudy today, and yeah, enjoy it. It's Tuesday. And while we won't have the Bruins Maple Leafs for you on the pulse of an H, Bruins puck drop 7 tonight. It is 7. I checked. Second thing I did this morning, J Dog, was check the time, 7 or 8, to plan my evening. J Dog, I have to tell you, we haven't talked much about it. They're not there yet because I've seen series where the Bruins have led 3-1. It became 3-3. But I got to tell you, Brad Marchand right now is probably at the best time of the year peaking as the captain. He's leading, he's scoring, he's making stuff happen. He's in the head and the mind of the Maple Leafs and their star players, and the Bruins are looking pretty darn good. They really are. Yeah, yeah. Wow, swept right through them. Well, the Panthers, look at them. They're pretty darn good. I know. I know. Well, you know what? I mean, I love him. I love how he takes his son everywhere with him, and he's just a great leader, and he's been amazing. But he is getting up there. Yeah, yeah. And look at Marshy. He's like, I think he's leading the Bruins in playoffs all-time goals almost. Yeah, he's just amazing. But you know what the Bruins, they're not foolish. Montgomery learned last year. He's like, look it, we had the best record of the season, and then we got blown out. We lost first round of the Panthers. Let's finish this. Let's finish this. Get this get this off our back. Let's beat them tonight. We don't even want to go. We don't even want to go to another game here. Yeah. Yeah. No, we want to end it. End it tonight. Boom. Then we don't know yet if they're playing the Canes or Panthers or who yet, right? Next round, we have to. The Bros will get some time to wait. Yeah, right. Let me preview the next hour because it is jam packed. We're going to hear about that New England Young Fishermen's Alliance over in Portsmouth. Andrea is going to tell us all about that. If you're thinking of making a living out in the ocean, I'm going to hear from Aaron Real, NBC News. I'm also going to hear from Joe Guyton with some financial thoughts. Mike Cody, New Hampshire Magazine and New Hampshire Business Review editor, talking about this is the time, believe it or not, a lot of ski areas are offering those early discounted seasons passes. But did last winter, even though a lot of snow came late, very late, in fact, the ski area is about to close when they get the best snow of the season, end of March into April. Did the warmer, not great first three quarters or half of the season, is it keeping some folks from getting these early ski passes? Cody's on deck. Rory O'Neill, NBC News Radio national correspondent. And then a little bit later on this morning, the 11 o'clock hour, more of my interview with Kelly Ayotte at 11:20 on her talking about her race for governor. We're going to hear also from Barry Glennon on some consumer information from the Securities and Regulation folks. Hey, Google, hey, Alexa, play the Pulse of an Age. And an important reminder, we thank our friends from Coca-Cola to Service Credit Union to FedPoint to Tuscan Kitchen and Tuscan Brands. Now there's some more lightning and thunder out there, J-Dog. We're going to be hearing on Wednesday, we go 12 hours for our veterans, my 10th annual Make 12 Hours Count for Veterans Count. 6 a.m. to 6 p.m. Wednesday. It's 2 weeks from tomorrow, right, J-Dog? 2 weeks from tomorrow as we welcome in May 15th. We go 12 hours. And, I don't know about you, but I'm getting a little sick and tired of talking about everyone's rights in this country. Everyone's rights. Less than 1% serve in our military, 330 million Americans. I want to talk more about veterans care. How about you? I've said this on my show, if we can't take care and better care of our veterans, I don't think we have much business taking care of many people other than that. I mean, if we can't do it right for our veterans, why should we worry about taking care of anyone else? I'm sorry. They sacrifice more. The suicide rate's too high. Homelessness is too high. Let's step up and do the right thing. My 10th annual Make 12 Hours Count. Check it out, vetscount.org. Hour number 2 coming up.